glad I'm going home with 3 more good points.
That's right.
You know,
Peter, you got
3 good principles. Well, I've seen the schedule, guys. Noon is lunch already, even on Eastern time. And so this is the appetizer. So in conclusion, no. I've got to share y'all. I told the ladies as I came in this morning, I said, you know, if y'all doing all this work back there for our benefit and how much we're going to enjoy it, it's really going to be hard to tell a story on y'all. But here I am. Here's this elderly gentleman who has lived a long and full life. He's really had a great life, and he's had a lot of great accomplishment. He has served his country. He has been successful in his work. He's been successful in all the leadership roles that he's been given: husband, brother, father, grandfather. But now he's coming to the end of his way, and his time is brief, and he wants to pass from this life in his own bed. And he's going to be given the opportunity to do that. He has had a 60-something year marriage to a lady named Sarah that he loved as a youth. Sarah had done so much for him all through those 60-plus years that one day he called her in to the side of the bed and he said, Sarah, I want you to sit right here, and before I go, I want to tell you something that means a great deal to me. Sarah, when we married and I was drafted into service and went to war and came back with a Purple Heart, having been wounded in battle, you nursed me, you took care of me until it was several weeks, several months before I was able to work. I've never forgotten that. And then when on the job one day, I had a heart attack, open heart surgery, 5 bypasses. And in recovery, you took care of me day and night for several weeks until I regained all my strength. And now here I am, having battled for the last 5 years or so with a malignancy that is going to take me from you. And I just want you to know, Sarah, you've taken care of me through all of that. I just want you to know, Sarah, you've been bad luck. Maybe not the best advice to share. Oh, man. Well, I do say in conclusion, because not only the end of the program, but also the time has been cut short here a little bit, and so they knew I was coming, and we want to finish on time. But I know that you look back upon your life and think about from your youth up. I've said to students many, many times over the years, you know, if you were blessed to be raised in a home where you had really a outstanding, wonderful Christian father, in addition, you know, assuming that you also had mother, but if you had a father, because there are so many who do not really know the concept of fatherhood, not having had one, not having been raised by one. Some of that, you know, is because of tragedy. Sometimes that is because of desertion. Sometimes all kinds of reasons. But for the ones who have, they have had a figure. Well, just like last week, Joan and I had to We made a quick trip to Huntsville to do the funeral service for her last uncle, a brilliant man, a great man, an elder in the church, but who was he made it to 90, and he was in on the early years of the development of our space program in Huntsville, actually worked with von Braun in the early years. And, for his family and for the people around him, I mean, everything was centered on the man that he was and the things that he did and all that he had to give, like Jules has just described. And we received the most beautiful letter from one of the daughters right before leaving home and coming up here, who kind of recaptured all of that in some of the most beautiful language that I have ever heard. Made us cry. And I think how wonderful to be raised by someone like that. And yet, if there are precious children out here in the church, in the world, in schools, whatever, who have not had that, who steps into that role? Who steps into that role? You and I have been blessed, I'm sure. If we've been raised in the Lord's church, we have been blessed by godly mentors. I'm really glad that when I met Joan and we eventually fell in love and decided to marry, that she was majoring in elementary education at Freed-Hardeman, because I had determined in growing up and my mother making sure that in a public school, even though small town, public school where the church was, and to this day, the predominant influence right there in the heart of Middle Tennessee, that I was going to be with a teacher who was a member of the church. And so I had members of the church elementary teachers all the way grades through 8, and the principal too. And then in the high school, not everyone was, but a good representation. But my coaches were members of the church. So I had all those teacher influences. And then, of course, when you go to a place like Freed-Hardeman, I mean, they're just everywhere. Mentors. And there can be mentors who take people in the wrong direction, but the ones that really make life rich, again, whether we're rich or not in possessions, we are living rich lives because of the relationships that we have had with them. And what I'm talking about is I like to reflect upon the mentors that I have had, not just in life, but especially in the church, people in the family who, in my case, had to replace a father. And so I know the importance that the Lord especially gives us of being hopefully godly, spiritual mentors to every little one that is brought into our building. And then, as they grow and as they develop into youth and teens and young adults, one of my mentors that I still have is a name that is very familiar to many of you, and that would be Brother Tom Holland, who's about 80. I visited with him earlier this year. Oh, how wonderful that was. He's in an assisted living facility now, but in worship every Sunday. Not able to preach anymore, but he's preached all of his life and then some. And my life was forever changed by being under his influence. And you think I can forget that? In fact, I told him that day, I said, Brother Tom, whatever little that I have been able to do, you have been a part of. And I'm here to remind you of that and to thank you for that. David's father-in-law will be one of those guys too, my advisor, my academic advisor at Freed-Hardeman. But what I want us to think about in these closing remarks is to think about some qualities of godly mentors that we find in Scripture. And I think even of men who made mistakes. If you look at the life of Samuel, and you look at the life of Eli, and the mistakes that Eli made with his own boys, which are really not only tragic, but unforgivable, because evidently the implication is there are things that he could have done that he did not do. But boy, did he have a willing mentee in Samuel. I love that statement that Hannah made when she brought Samuel to Eli to stay with him, you know, in the tabernacle, and he says, she says to him, "For this boy I have prayed." I love that. And so, whether we realize it or not, we have the blessed opportunity to be mentors, but there are qualities that are needed. May I suggest to you biblically that we begin with character. Character is not what people think we are. It's not reputation. It's what we really are. It's what some little girl said in Sunday school one time is, oh, character is what we do when we're in the dark. You know, when nobody else knows, when no one else sees. Well, Paul said, you be imitators of me, being the senior saint in this relationship to the Corinthians, a congregation that he helped plant in the most immoral city in the world. If it had been me, I wouldn't even gone there. I would say, well, there's nobody there. And the Lord said, no, 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 I have many people here. Don't you be afraid.
Yes.
Don't you be afraid. I have many people here. And so we have the great Corinthian congregation from which we still learn so much. But you imitate me what? As I imitate him. Okay, so we pray fervently that, Father, you will help me to develop the kind of character. I don't want to be a character. I want to be a man of character. And I confess to you, I'm not there yet. I'm not where I want to be. Jules, I'm still becoming. And this is one reason I love being with you, because you help me. And when I see all that you're doing with your congregations and how much things like this matter to you and are important to you, I go back exhilarated. Yes. Exhilarated. Men of like precious faith. The men that I admire are men who have not disappointed. They have been men of character. Availability. When Nicodemus came to the Lord at night, and it seems to be the most important thing about that, why in the world did Nicodemus come at night? Forget that. You know, Brother Downflat say there's a Greek word for that, baloney. You know, that's not the point. That's not the issue. He came to the Lord. And he made a very interesting observation and had obviously an intellectual need, and the Lord met it. But the Lord was available at the end of a full day, busy day, and he was always available. And so if I'm going to be a mentor of people in the church, boys, girls, men, women, you elders over deacons that hopefully will prepare themselves to step into your shoes someday, and you can do so smiling with great fulfillment as you watch them. You know, the glory of teaching is seeing your students, David, do well. And besides David and Kirk, I have Mike and former student. Roger, yeah, Roger, thank you. And that sweet, Julie? Jill, okay, all right. I used to say I have sons and daughters all over the world, and it hit me what that sounded like. And I decided I had to quit saying that. But that's the way I feel, you know. That's the way I feel. I received a text yesterday, Brother Billy, can can I miss my exam on Friday so I can get on the road a little bit earlier and take it when I get back? I said, yes, you may. I was already on the road. Yes, you may, as long as you text me when you get home that you got there safely. And the student takes back, ha, 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 it's a deal. You know, they don't take it very seriously. I take it very seriously. And so being available for people, giving time. When I was in high school, I was my senior year in high school. I didn't tell this, and I don't really have the time, but I've never been able to forget this. I thought I was in love with really the most wonderful young lady in town. The only problem was we did not share the same faith. And the stronger that I got in my faith, the more, at least, stubborn she got about hers. And the great Gus Nichols came to our town for an 8-day meeting, morning services, night services, and 2 Sundays. How in the world we could get the Gus Nichols and the Guyan Woods and the N.B. Hardeman. Brother Hardeman held his last meeting in 1961. He died in 65. When I was 10 years old in my congregation, that was his last meeting. How we got those guys to come for a full week? Well, that was just the way it was back then. One afternoon, I knock on the motel door of Brother Gus after school. I introduce myself, and I say, Brother Gus, can I visit with you for a few minutes? Or Brother Nichols, may I said, I have a real problem. I'm trying to convert this young lady, and I'm just really having a hard time. And come in. And really he was, you know, stretching out, taking a little bit of a nap, because usually our brethren would have a breakfast, and then the morning service, and then a big old lunch, and then a big dinner in the evening, and then he'd preach for as long as he wanted to. And here this kid interrupts all of that, and he's an older man at the time. Sit down. And he got up and got 6 pages of typewriter paper and stapled them where it made 12 half pages, gave me a big first grade pencil that I hadn't seen since the first grade, and said, now write. Title, The Difference in the Blank Church and the New Testament Church. 12 half pages later, and 90 minutes of his life were given to me. Availability. When we get calls, we try to teach our young men, train young men, you know, when you get a call about something, are you supposed to go? Yes. They wouldn't be calling you if they didn't need you. They didn't expect you to go. And so availability. Love. We've got to love people. We talked about this before. And the Lord says in this particular text in John 15, you're familiar with verse 13, greater love is no man than this. But right before that he says, love one another just as I have loved you. And so if I have problems loving people, I'm going to have a hard time mentoring people at any age. Got to love them. Agape means the unselfish giving of yourself, benevolent goodwill. And then, as has been pointed out, growing in grace and knowledge, we have got to know the Word. We have got to know the truth. We have got to know the difference between right and wrong, truth and error, and that there is no gray. Do you realize that one of the things about the Jewish people in the Old Testament was they didn't know anything about gray areas. You know, things were white and black. And man, we got so much gray we can't even see the white or the black these days. You see? And so we've got to know what is the truth. What is the Word of God? I've got to know the truth. But you know what? I've also got to know the world. I've got to know the world that people are living in. I've got to know where they're coming from. I've got to know why people who are living in open sin and yet are never missing a service do not understand why that is the height of hypocrisy. Do not understand. And so I must have skills, knowledge. You know, the statement here is, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And the Jews thought, what? Can you believe this? They said, we've never been enslaved to anybody. We're descendants of Abraham. Well, they'd been enslaved by the Egyptians and by the Babylonians and by the Persians and by the Assyrians. You talk about not having a clue. But they were really enslaved by sin. That was their problem. And then very closely related to knowledge, as you know, is the application of it. We've got to know the truth about not only subjects, but know also the truth about life, the truth about world, the truth about what does make people behave the way that they do, which I'm not a psychologist and don't play one anywhere, but you know, the study of psychology is the study of human behavior, and the more we study the different types of behavior, the more we see ourselves, and the more we see the people in Scripture even more clearly, and the people that we have to deal with. But here's a statement from Job. Don't you love the book of Job? I feel so sorrowful that that great man of God, who most likely lived in the patriarchal age, had to experience all that he did. But for God to prove a point to the devil that not everybody can be bought, and that not everybody is serving God for naught, for no reason. And you know what it shows? It shows God's, number one, it shows God's great knowledge of Job. He knew Job. And Job didn't have a clue as to what was going on. It shows his great knowledge of Job, and it shows his absolute confidence in Job because he knew him. Well, anyway, in response to his critics, Job makes the observation, in giving all the praise to God, he says in Job 12, in verse 12, that wisdom is with aged men, and with long life comes understanding. You know, as we grow older, there are things we understand, Rob, we used to not understand. There's still a lot I don't understand. But see, I have mentors to whom I go and say, you know, I'm sorry, I ought to know this by now, but I don't. Can you help me? And boy, you think about the spiritual leaders that we've had the opportunity to be exposed to. The late Brother E. Claude Gardner was like a father to me. I mean, no one could have been better. From the day I stepped on that campus as a student until his death last year, how much I learned from him. Communication of knowledge and wisdom. Jules mentioned this in industry, in business, and in fact in all walks of life. Let me tell you what employers, you know this, if you're an employer, you know what people are looking for, and why employers are especially looking for our students all over the country, for our graduates. They know that comparatively to graduates of other schools, that they're people of character. Our district attorney told me one time, I would take anything if the students at our other schools were like your students. I said, thank you, sir, but you cannot have them. We're keeping them. So, you know, after the matter of character and after the matter of communication, that is, you know, skill and being able to communicate, the ability to persuade, you know, those are things that people are looking for. Communication and persuasion go hand in hand in being able to get done whatever a company needs to do to survive and to make a profit. And that's who they're looking for. And in the church, we've got to have that ability to communicate. Again, all right, like a parent, why is this right behavior? Why is this wrong behavior? Why, if we keep going this way, we're going to end up here rather than where we want to be and need to be. he opened his mouth and began to teach them. We've got to have communication skills, obviously. That's both verbal and nonverbal. You know, nothing beats the communication of a good example day by day by day by day. And yet, along with that, there must be the ability to listen and respond and communicate. A mentor in church, biblically, is also someone who inspires confidence. I love what Paul says about Timothy when he's commending him to the Philippians. And he says, I have no one that is like-minded like this young man. In other words, there is no one on the horizon coming along that loves you and cares for you as I do like Timothy. He is a kindred spirit. Well, where in the world do you think he got that? Timothy was evidently converted on the first missionary journey. He took his place on the team the second missionary journey, the third missionary journey, and then when Paul is nearing his death, Timothy, come before winter. Come quickly. Only Luke is with me. Please come. Want to see his son in the faith, in whom he had the greatest confidence, and who later would be imprisoned himself, according to the book of Hebrews. And he said, you know, when you come, bring my cloak and the books or the parchments. Oh, what great confidence Paul inspired in Timothy. And then several things we love about Barnabas. Barnabas went to Antioch of Syria, the third largest city of the ancient world at the time. And it would be the great Gentile mission church, you know, the Gentile missionaries going to the Gentiles from Antioch. And that's where all the journeys began and where they were completed by the apostle and Barnabas too himself when they had their split. But when he left for Tarsus to look for Saul, when he found him, he brought him to Antioch also. Why? He got there, saw the great opportunity, had great vision, saw, I can't do this by myself. The city is too big. I need a co-worker. I need a fellow worker. And so, who knows? Saul may have remained Saul of Tarsus if it hadn't been for Barnabas, who went and found him. And there's a tradition, by the way, in church history that says he had to take some time to find Saul, because when he got back to his home of Tarsus from Jerusalem and informed his family that he had become a Christian, they disowned him. And so it was hard to find. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But Barnabas found him, took him back to Antioch, and the rest is history. And so we've got to see within young people. We've got to see the possibilities. You know, we have this program that Kirk has been a part of from the very beginning, called Horizons, the Future Church Leaders Workshop. And there are so many young men that are in ministry today who never had a clue about anything like that until they came to that program and then decided to come to school. So many young women. And by the way, Kirk, the young lady that we honored 4 years ago was just named Miss FHU, Bailey White from Tupelo. Lads to Leaders programs and things like that you're involved in. Incredible vision about what needs to be developed. Also, a great quality of mentoring is we've got to be encouragers. And you know what? That doesn't mean that you're never going to be discouraged yourself. You're not going to be disappointed. You're not going to be hurt, sometimes even betrayed. But you still got to be an encouragement. Here again is something about Barnabas. When he got to Antioch, even before he went back to get Saul for help, the text in Acts 11:23 says, he rejoiced and began to encourage them all with resolute heart to remain true to the Lord. In other words, there were those in Antioch already who were members of the church. Somebody had planted a church there before. And so what he did, he rejoiced at the grace of God and with resolute heart encourage them to remain true to the Lord. And then we can't be mentors without this one, forgiveness. I have an update for you. During the break, I received a call from one of our elders that just this morning they had a meeting with a person who before had been unwilling to be penitent, and really it's two members in the congregation, one of which claimed to have been penitent but really had not been, and was caught lying, and the elders found out about it and brought things to a head. But both have prepared letters to be written to the congregation tomorrow, confessing their sins, pleading for forgiveness. And there will be another big praying party and forgiveness party. And of course, they still must make the decision going forward what they're going to do going forward, because we've been through this before. But at least it's evidently saving a disfellowshipping situation. At least one of those parties will be worshiping somewhere else. But this is a very happy resolution to what before was going to be a very pain day. Well, we're in the forgiving business, brothers. Yes. We're in the forgiving business. Yes. And that doesn't mean that people can be forgiven and return to their lifestyle of sin. They can't do it. Yes. There's a current question, can I be gay and be a Christian? Yes, but you can't be a practicing one. You know, because I could be something else. I mean, I could have some other issue, but I can't practice that issue. Yes. If I'm going to be, of course, we'd prefer for that not even to be discussed, really, wouldn't it? But it's being asked. I mean, I have, if not gay, same-sex attraction, okay? Yes. And there are people that are living with that, that are conquering that, and they're doing so by the power of the gospel. Yes. Barnabas took Mark with him and sailed away to Cyprus, Acts 15:39. It's very clear that from chapter 13, when Mark left the mission team at pretty much the first port stop once they got back to the mainland, Pamphylia. Nothing is really said about that there, but in 15 we are told that Paul considered it a clear case of desertion. He quit. He left. I'm not taking him again. That's a bit unusual for the Apostle Paul, an apostle of such grace and mercy, and you read 2 Corinthians over and over again how tender this man is. But let me tell you, he was also stubborn. He was stubborn. And Barnabas said, maybe because of the family relationship, Paul, I love you. You're my brother. I'll always love you. I disagree with you on this. I will take him with me, and we'll get more done. And they did. Yes. Now, what would have happened to John Mark, who gave us the second gospel account of the Lord's life by inspiration, if it had not been for Barnabas? And possibly in our room today, what would have happened to you if there had not been a godly mentor who refused to give up on you? I have a nephew 2 years younger than I am. He squandered the opportunity to get a quality Christian education, failing a class after failing a class. I tell my sister I would not spend another dime on him. Now you understand, he wasn't my son. He was my nephew. And I think it took about 6 years for him to eventually graduate from that school in Nashville that happens to be playing in town today, if you haven't heard. He eventually got through. There was a brother there, a Bible teacher who was also the preacher at his congregation by the name of Brother Leo Snow. If I've ever met a prince, it was Leo Snow. Excellent preacher. And he worked with that boy and worked with that boy and worked with that boy and would not give up, and his mother would not give up. And graduation night came, but beyond that, he immediately was a 10-year youth minister. After that, about a 25-year pulpit minister, even though in secular work, and is today a spiritual leader in all of his circles in Nashville, where he's been very successful. You think how many times I've eaten those words? I would not spend another dime on that boy. But she didn't see it that way. Leo Snow didn't see it that way. Where would he be if it were not for them? And I want you to realize when you're dealing with a young man, especially, since we're talking with men and we're thinking about leading men, but also leading our precious ladies, we never know when we're working with a John Mark. We never know. So as I think back, not only on my mentors, and you think about your mentors, I have a list here that if I had time, I would go through just some basic lessons that I've learned, some practical life-to-life lessons that just stay with me. You know, like I'll just give you one example that I heard Brother Gardner say to the faculty. It wasn't just talking to me, but to the faculty. I mean, the man conducted endless faculty meetings in his 43-year tenure. But time and time again, when I would think, oh my, this is an insurmountable problem that we're facing here as an institution. Young, whippersnapper, wet behind the ears, didn't know anything. And here was this great man of faith who every time would remind us there is a solution to every problem. We must find that solution together. Now, what did I take from that? Okay, when I'm involved in a problem, I remember I don't have it yet, I don't have the solution yet, but it's a principle of life that there is a solution to every problem. May not be the one that I want, but if it's the right one, it's the right solution. You know, that's just one. There are a lot of them. High school employers that remained as father figures, and so many ministers that have gone before. Brothers-in-law, these 5 sisters mean I had 5 brothers-in-law. So I had some father figures there and some great ones. But let me close with this. We must remember the ultimate mentor. The one who has made all the difference, not only in our life, but our eternity. It is in Jesus that we see the model of genuine character, who was always available, whose motive was his love for all people, who was the embodiment of both knowledge and wisdom, whose ability to communicate was incomparable. Never has man spake like this man, whose confidence in the apostles was unfailing, whose vision covered the whole world, whose encouragement inspired lifelong loyalty, and whose forgiveness gave us forever spiritual giants named Peter and Paul. And I don't remember where I found this. I hope you can see it okay. Jesus taught and modeled compassionate leadership, which attracted passionate followers. And I pray that is exactly where you and I will always be.